All right, we are back on the podcast where we are training men in spiritual fitness. I am here with my friend Joe Bernard. Joe, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Trying to think of one thing that's interesting and eventful, and absolutely nothing is coming to mind other than it's been a quiet week, kids at camp, so kind of end of summer, still kind of enjoying a change of pace before the chaos erupts again.
That's good. I know as we record this, at least, aren't y'all coming into like a big time in Edinburgh in August, like a huge deal in Edinburgh? Y'all have like stand-up comedians on every corner or something?
Yeah. It's called the Fringe, and I don't know of any. It's a month-long festival, which I think, for Americans, that the idea of celebrating for that long is mind-boggling. But thousands, I mean, it's thousands of different acts and different comedians and different shows of all types, and they use every empty space they can find in the city. And so it's heaving with tourists, lots of street performers. You either love it or you hate it. And I'm probably somewhere in between.
All right, there you go. There you go. Sounds like Mardi Gras for us down here, you
Yeah,
know?
that's
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So we've got that coming up in another like 6 months down here. I got some time. But good to be with you here today to again continue our discussion about discipling the different generations. We've had our friend Andy with us for the past episodes. I think he got lost somewhere in a game of Shinty, probably. Andy. But no, we do miss him today. He'll be back with us hopefully in the future. But we've come to a point, as we've talked about different generations of men. How do we identify each of them, but also what are the unique advantages and challenges with each of them? We've come to an older generation now. We started with Gen Z and then millennials and Gen X, and now we're at the boomers. All right. We are at the boomer generation. And so I want us to think about and help guys. I want us to picture that guy that's sitting in his church, thinking about starting a men's ministry in his church. But he's got all these different generations of men in his church. How do we help him specifically think about, that handful of old guys? I'm going to call them old guys, boomers in his church. How does he begin discipleship programs, discipleship efforts that actually help that guy? So that's kind of our aim. But let's start by just identifying what a boomer is. We've been using this book, this Generations by Jean Twenge, as kind of a launching point for this discussion, and she identifies this generation as people that were born 1946 to 1964. So we're talking about guys that are in their 60s and 70s right now. But what are some of the identifying traits or characteristics that you see of this boomer generation, Joe?
Maybe I'll run through some of the things she highlights because I think they're interesting. She talks about a self-focus, that this was the beginning in many ways of the individualism. If you think back to the people just before the silent generation, the World War II generation, very, very much a kind of collective mindset,
Yeah.
a corporate mindset. This is beginning to be more of a little bit me-centered. It's a group that broke rules. I mean,
Yeah.
they were born in the 50s maybe, but by the end of the 60s and the 70s, they were breaking every rule they could find. And so, in terms of discipleship, they are guys with a past. And just because they're buttoned up and, wearing a collared shirt right now, they could have been a hippie. They could have been growing pot on a farm someplace, in the early 70s. So, they broke the rules. Family life changed. They maybe been divorced. Divorce was a much more popular option, especially early 80s. Um, and they've really, they've just seen the world change. I mean, you think they went through from they were born just after World War II. They went through the sexual revolution. They went through communism and all of the upheaval. They've seen family life turned on its head. They've seen the whole world stage change, and then they've been through all of the kind of LGBTQ sort of stuff more recently. And the digital revolution. So you put all that together, and I mean, they have really seen the world change in their lifetime. So there's a lot of experience, but there's also, I think, a lot of confusion about what's happened. And I think those are questions that are often on their minds.
Yeah. You nailed it. There's a lot of experience, but also a lot of brokenness that comes alongside that as well. And they are a generation. Yeah, I typed into Google actually this morning. I said, describe that this generation, the boomer generation, in one word for me, and that Google chose the word transformation. And so I think that gets to some of what you're talking about there. They did experience a lot of different, revolutions, cultural revolutions, and such that led to some transformation, but also just some baggage and some scars along the way. I do think when I think of boomers, I do think of probably that first generation to experience, broken families, divorce, and things like that. That does play into church life and discipleship and complicates things a little bit. So you're talking about guys that walk in with some baggage and maybe even some scars. And though they have scars, this is the generation that I find they will not share any emotion with you whatsoever. So the boomer generation lacks the ability to in healthy ways talk about their emotions and their feelings and even just some of their past and their scars and how to deal with that in proper ways. But more than anything, yeah, we're talking about okay, a group of guys that experienced this big bang of individualism, a group of guys that went through that groovy 60s and 70s time, a group of guys that don't talk about their emotions. But Joe, this is a group of guys. This is our dads. Like the boomers, it's our dads. For you and I, like this is exactly who our dads are, right? So how does that affect the way you begin to think about boomers and discipleship and boomers and the challenges and the advantages with that?
Yeah, and it's interesting. If you're a boomer listening to us, that's one thing. A lot of guys will not. They'll be maybe our age, maybe even younger.
Yeah,
And so this is beginning to enter into the difficulties. It's one thing to relate to guys that are your peers or beneath you. You know, and
yeah.
the Bible has a lot to say about respecting the guys who are above you
Hmm.
in terms of age. And so there is a complication here. The recognition on the one hand that we want to help these guys. But at the same time, if they're older, they also should be helping us too. And so this is going to be it's going to have traffic going both directions if we're
Yeah.
talking about discipling this age group.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. So let's jump into some specific kind of challenges, I guess, as we think about this. If you picture yourself as that guy in church who wants to start doing men's discipleship in your church, but you've got a group of boomers that are maybe complacent, apathetic, what are some of the challenges that you see as you begin to face initiating discipleship among this group of boomers? What are the unique challenges that we face there?
I think there are certain things that appeal to this group. So, if you have like a regular church breakfast for men, I
Hmm.
think often, it's going to be this age group that shows up.
Hmm.
So, and partly because some of them are starting to retire, they've got more time. But equally, I think they like that environment. They're more comfortable with somebody at the top, at the front, giving a bit of a talk. Um, that's a little bit not formal necessarily, but a bit
Hmm.
organized. I think what's often more difficult, some of them have grown into be great mentors and able to
Hmm.
help young guys or to enter into those relationships, but some of them haven't. And
Hmm.
so often you have these guys and they might be really committed in the sense that they attend church every week and they again go to the breakfast, but it's kind of getting them out of that seat into the space where they might actually meet with other men and have good conversations. I think that's often the tricky bit. How do you help this group if they've not learned it already step into some of those opportunities they have? So that's
Yeah,
one of the challenges I see.
yeah, I think you're right. This is, to me, this is the men's breakfast generation. I think about just even my own father. Um, in my dad passed away, I guess about 6 months ago or so. But in the months leading up to his death, I would call him and just trying to mine out some old stories, and questions about it, like things like, hey. We got this behind the scenes tour of NASA as a family one time, and you were friends with an astronaut somehow. Like, how did that happen exactly, Dad? And a lot of the stories came back to, well, it was a men's breakfast. My dad was in charge of the men's breakfast at our church, and he was calling to get speakers to come for the men's breakfast. And so he would make friendships with these guys, and it led to all kinds of stuff, cool stories for me and my family back, behind the scenes experiences. But yeah, you're talking about a generation of men who were really into that men's breakfast thing. But like you said, they got stuck there. I feel like, that was, from my dad, yeah, back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. Men's breakfast was killing it. He had all the Dallas Cowboys players coming to our men's breakfast.
Man.
Oh yeah, we had the best of it. NASA astronauts, you name it, we had it. Dad was getting them. And it was awesome, but that's the only model they ever knew and stuck with. And now, all those, once you run through your list of contacts, now, there's no one else to bring in. You run through this problem of, okay, we've been doing the same thing forever, and it's just kind of dull and stuck. And now I think an additional challenge with that, I saw again in my father, is this generation is now experiencing just extensive medical needs. The
Yeah.
medically, they're growing older. It's harder for them to get together. So my dad would have loved in his last few years of life, would have loved to do a men's group or something, but his medical needs were such that he was at the doctor all the time. And so you've got
Yeah.
just practical challenges with this generation as they get older. They don't have the energy that they used to show up to men's events. They don't have the ability because they're at the doctor all the time, or maybe even in the hospital for certain stints. So you've got to be patient and work around that and kind of meet them where they are. And find the creative ways to actually reach out to them. I don't know any other challenges that you kind of see in
Yeah.
this generation.
I think I see there's a kind of tension that this group needs to be okay with. On the one hand, there's the sense as a Christian, you never retire. And so
Yeah.
some of these guys need to be encouraged to continue to give themselves and to not just settle into cutting the grass and watching the news in a very sedentary lifestyle. If they've got strength, give oneself.
Mhm.
On the other hand, what I've also seen is there is a sense where you retire in the sense that you have to step out or step back from some of what you previously did
Mm.
because you don't have the energy. And I think what I've seen with a lot of guys is they cross, especially about age 70. Initially, they still feel like they've got a lot of energy. And so they very much want to be in that seat of responsibility. But what begins to happen is actually, like you said, they're beginning to lose some of that strength. And so there's this real wrestling. On the one hand, they want to act as if they can still do everything they did when they were 60, but they're not 60. And so there's this way trusting God as you begin to enter into this decline, which again, not that that's going to happen immediately at 70, but that's part of life too. And so
Mhm.
these guys need to begin to also know how to step out when it's appropriate, because that's part of what enables the younger guys to step in and begin to have the responsibility that will grow them up. So it's that little tension between
Yeah.
continuing to run hard, but also recognizing the fact that we're finite creatures.
Yeah, that is such a hard balance there because it's like don't give up. Like, hey, your energy is waning and you need to hand some things off, but also don't just sit on the sidelines. We don't need a bunch of boomers sitting on the sidelines. It's like, is there really any difference at all between that millennial who's living in the basement playing video games all day and the boomer who's sitting in his recliner watching TV all day? Like, what's the difference there? It's the same man ultimately, right? And so boomers need to realize that, wait, I'm just sitting in my recliner watching TV all day. I've given up. Like I'm not actually contributing in any way. And that's not discipleship. That's not what our churches need. That's not what our communities need. So there is a sense in which, yes, your energy is waning and you need to take a step back and maybe hand some things off, but you got to stay active and you've got to stay relevant. You can't be the kid you're yelling at, the millennial, that's playing video games all day. You can't be the boomer version of that and just sit in your recliner and watch TV all day. That's certainly not healthy. And so that's the challenge, though. That's the challenge as we reach out to these men because they've fallen in that habit. That's kind of who they are, where they're at. Well, let's think about maybe some of the advantages, though. Okay, so that's some of the challenges as you start to reach out and disciple men of the boomer generation. But what are the advantages of these specific age group of men that you've seen as you disciple them?
I think definitely, again, there's time.
Hmm.
Most of them are stepping out of work full time at least.
Yeah.
Uh, and there's certainly experience, and not just the experience of what you did right in life, but if you've got broken marriages in your past, well, those are learning experiences where God teaches you all kinds of things. And so if they're willing to open up, and you said earlier, they're often not, but if they're willing to open up, then there's all kinds of experience that can become wisdom, distilled as wisdom and passed forward. I
Hmm.
think the challenge is if these guys haven't learned to mentor, I don't know how often they'll be able to just do that all of a sudden one to one. But if you can get these guys in a small group, so
Yeah.
it's not entirely up to them. And so now you've got 4 or 5 guys together of different ages, or maybe 4 of them are younger, one of them is a boomer. Then it creates a wonderful opportunity where you can pass questions over and set them up for mentorship without them even realizing it's happening. And so I
Mm.
think it's the opportunity is to sometimes put them in these situations, feed them the questions, and let them talk.
That's good. That's good. I like that. Yeah, I think you opened up there by talking about they have time. This is a generation, that's one of their advantages. They do have time. They also, with retirement, some of them have not only time, but a little bit of money also to spend. And so one of the things I've seen with this generation is just how mission work has become a great opportunity for discipleship. So you've all of a sudden got men who maybe are stepping out of the workforce, looking for something to do and maybe even have money to go spend and do it. And I know down here in South Louisiana, we have our fair share of disasters, and
Yeah.
it's this generation of men, honestly, that will respond overnight when a disaster happens. They will respond overnight and disappear for 3 months and go do mission work to help rebuild cities or provide food, provide shelter, or whatever. I can't do that. I've got a family and young kids. I can't disappear for a week or 3 months at a time. But this boomer generation can and still has enough energy to go and do something like that. And so I see this as great discipleship opportunities. You've got boomer men. There's nothing like mission work, being sent out by God to go evangelize and go set up tent camps or rebuild, use your construction skills, whatever it is. Those are great opportunities for just being side by side with other men where you're being discipled along the way. So that's one way in which men can still stay busy in a sense throughout their retirement, but have a mission and a focus and a purpose and actually rise up and feel like, okay, my life isn't over. I actually have something to offer here. And so, yeah, it's this generation that has that ability and that I think we need to kind of press into a little more and say, "Hey, go out and be on mission." I think about my own dad. A few years before he died, I didn't even really know he was going on a mission trip. He just told me when he got back. He's like, "Oh yeah, I went to I think it was Brazil. I don't even remember where he went, but he just disappeared and went. And he came back with stories of leading dozens of people to Christ and helping people that were impoverished get food, grocery carts full of food, and was just so excited. And I think this is where we can press into this generation is help them be the guys that lead the mission trips, help them be the guys that organize it and that respond to those needs that are around us because it does excite them. It's something. It's a discipleship effort in that sense. So, what
Yeah.
else do
And
you
I
see?
think here it's probably the same, where you are, but you have these men's shed sort of things.
Yeah.
And again, these guys hang out there. They've got the time, but they also have that interest. So I think they've got that practical bent often, and that can be leveraged, for discipleship opportunities. So I think we should just really acknowledge that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's wrap this all up into one single scenario for guys, okay? Let's bring this all together for pitch you this scenario of there's a young guy, early 20s. He's just graduating seminary, okay? So excited. He's graduated seminary. He's going to go take his first call to his first church. Small church out in the country somewhere, right? Not many people, and it's an older congregation. So he's got a good number. If it's a small congregation, maybe he's got 5 to 10 boomers in there, all right? They're complacent, they're apathetic, they really need discipleship. The whole community needs discipleship, but this is what you got to work with, young guy, okay? You've been given this church with these boomers to work with. What do you tell that guy? What's the advice that you give this young man who's stepping into a scenario where there is a group of boomers who need discipleship? How do you press him forward?
Well, you're describing Scotland only. If you get a church full of boomers, those are young guys, Evan. I don't know what you're talking about. So you get a church full of some young guys in their 60s and 70s. What do you do with them? Um, you know, there's no magic formula where
Yeah.
all of a sudden I think this group is going to be transformed and immediately be disciple making disciples and be evangelistic. I think ministry always begins by loving the people God has given you first. And so spend time. It's okay. There's probably not a breakfast yet for these guys. So step one, go ahead and start the breakfast.
Yeah.
Let that be the beginning, and just don't let it be the end. And so let that go for a little while,
Mhm.
and then maybe drop something new. They've not read a book together. Well, then you can read a book together,
Mhm.
and don't let it end with that. Maybe there's a mission, afternoon that you can go and do a small project. And I think you can begin to build something that gets more and more personal and allows for more and more conversation
Mhm.
and more explicit discipleship. And God willing, that might actually over time pull in some guys from different ages as well.
Mhm.
And that could become something dynamic. But
Mhm.
start small and incrementally keep moving things forward.
Yeah, I love it. That's fantastic. I think the only things that I'd add to that, yeah, it's funny. You and I know we both serve in different contexts in our churches, and so the first thing I tell this guy is I say, be grateful. Be grateful you've got boomers in your church. I'm in a church. I have zero boomer men. Not a single guy over the age of like 50. All right, so so be grateful that you got some boomers. You got something to work with here. That's fantastic. So don't overlook that blessing. It is a blessing for sure to have that older generation. And like you said, it's not even old there in Scotland. You got guys. I don't even know how they're still walking. Um, but no, then the other thing I'd say is you tell that young guy in seminary to, while he's still on the campus, look around him, sit down and make a list of the kind of guy that needs discipleship. So what are the issues he's facing? He's facing isolation and loneliness. He's facing being just stuck under some low ceilings of spiritual growth. He's frustrated. He's distracted by all the things around. And when you make that list, guess who that also applies to? It also applies to boomers. Like you've just described my dad, basically, an old guy who is isolated. We're all facing these same struggles. So don't look at the boomers and think, A, they've got it all figured out and I just need to sit back and let them handle it. No, 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 no. You have a part to play here in leading and helping them press this forward. But also don't look at them and think they know nothing or they're just so stuck and I've got to move on beyond them. No, no, no. They're men who need help. And that's what we do is we help these men through discipleship. And so don't be scared to start a small group with men who are boomers. Don't be scared to go and start a mission day where you invite them in. Do it. These are great guys, just like all the rest of us that face the same issues of being stuck and needing to get out of this rut spiritually. So yeah, just go and do it and meet them where they are, as you said. Anything else you want to kind of wrap up this series with before we move on to something new in the podcast as you look back on discipling men of the different generations? Just any final words from you?
There's one group we didn't talk about, and that's what she calls the silent generation.
Hmm.
And they're still around. And so these are the guys in their 80s. But to me, they're often, if you have a couple of them, they've got gold. I mean, they've got really of a different era, of a different kind of culture of masculinity, even.
Yeah.
And so don't not think about that group as well. But I think it's been really helpful to go through the different generations, think about what's distinct of the opportunities, the challenges, and to realize that there's never one key that fits every lock when it comes to
Mhm.
discipleship. So we need to be thinking about the particularities of the guys in front of us.
Yeah. And don't y'all in Scotland, y'all have a name for those old silent guys? Worthies? Is that what y'all call them?
Well, depending on the quality, but
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
you
Okay.
got to earn the right to be a worthy man.
You got to earn the right to be a worthy. Okay, well, that's all of us then. All right, no matter where we're headed, that's what we want to do. We want to raise men who become those worthies. But no, this has been a fun series. Glad we did it, and I hope it's been helpful for you guys as you've listened along, identified the unique challenges, but also the strengths of each of these generations, and how can you press into those as you continue discipleship efforts in your church and in your community. And I hope you'll join us next time on the Cross Training Ministries podcast.